Hello everyone, welcome to Rewind to Exam Day, an initiative by Unacademy. I am Hrishikesh Gangule. I have secured All India Rank 3 in NEET UG 2022, and today I am going to discuss the day before the exam and the exam day, how it worked out for me, so that you can plan your own strategy after knowing the situation which you may encounter on the exam day and before the exam. So starting with the day before the exam, on the advice of my teachers, I didn't do anything much. So my teachers had told me to take it light and actually not to touch the textbook at all. But knowing us students, I couldn't do that, and I had read a little bit, although not very extensively. I just revised a few points, and I just spent I spent most of the day sitting and just recollecting what I had learned, assimilating it, taking it into my head, and there was no taking test or looking at any test paper on that day. And that night I slept early at around 10 o'clock. This sleep is very important on the exam day because you should be in a very good frame of mind, you should be fresh and you should be full of energy while attempting the paper. So I slept at around 10, and on the exam day I got up at around 6 o'clock, and again I didn't do anything much till the time I started. So now coming to the exam day, I got up at 6 o'clock. I think I get up at around 6 to 7 every day. But on this day, I was very strict about getting up at 6 o'clock. I had 8 hours of sleep and I was feeling very fresh and energetic in the morning. So till 8 o'clock, I just revised a few concept maps, just brushed through them. Again, not reading extensively and getting stressed or trying to force something into my head. I just glanced at whatever I already knew and I revised a few formulae. And my reporting time at the exam center was 11:30. So we started at around 10 o'clock for the exam center. And at 11:30 when we reached the exam hall, it was very crowded. My father and I had gone together. It was very crowded, so we just decided to take a stroll. We went aside and we sat down at a very peaceful place. And there I had a little bit of snacks, because exam time is from 2 to 5. You have to be in the exam hall by 1. So you should not feel hungry during the exam, and at the same time you should not have a very heavy meal because that can disturb you during the exam. So I just had some light snacks, some dry fruits and chocolate, that type. And I finally entered the exam center at 12 to 12:30, 12:15, around that time. And there were a lot of checks, so thermal scan happened, then attendance happened at the ground floor. They would verify your name with a list. That happened, and finally when I reached the exam hall, it was around 12:45. So some kind of mess had happened during this initial attendance. My name was not written properly in the list, they had to rectify it. So such disturbances can happen on the exam day. There is nothing to worry about it because that happened to me, and I was able to remain calm, so no need to get worried and no need to get panicked. So I went into the exam hall at around 12:45. So invigilator told me to take my seat. For around 1 hour 15 minutes, I just sat at my bench. I didn't think of anything. I just closed my eyes and I meditated a little bit to keep myself calm. Then the invigilator gave us instructions. She told us that we would get our OMR at 2 o'clock. The entire packet would come at 2 o'clock along with the question paper and the OMR sheet and a pen which would be given separately. We would have to open the packet at 2 o'clock and we would fill the OMR sheet, and then we would start attempting the paper. So I just sat straight and waited for the clock to strike 2. When it struck 2, the invigilators started distributing the question papers. I got my packet, and as usual I just opened it. I started filling my OMR and then I started solving my paper. At around 2:15, I got my first shock. I was not allowed to tick on the question paper. So this was a rule which I had never come across anywhere. But on that particular day, I was told that I should not make a single mark on the question paper, which I was not prepared for because throughout this 2-year journey, I had developed the practice of ticking on the question paper and then marking the OMR in the end. So when I was told not to tick on the question paper, I got very scared and I got panicked somewhat. I asked my invigilator whether that was really prohibited, but she was insistent that you should not make a single mark on the question paper. So I thought, what next I can do? What is the best thing that I can do? I decided to write all the answers along with the question number at the back. That is, 2-3 papers are given at the back for rough work. So on one of those sheets, I wrote like question number 1, option 3, question number 2, option 4. That's what I did, because I thought I could not mark directly on the OMR sheet, because sometimes I find errors during checking. And on that day, I didn't want to take any such risk. So instead of directly marking on the OMR as soon as I found the answer, I started marking the question number and the answer on the rough sheets provided at the back. So this is what I did. I finished my paper in around 1 hour 20 minutes. I started with zoology section, then I went to physics, then I went to botany, and then I came to chemistry. I did chemistry in the end and zoology first. So I took around 10 minutes for zoology and then 10 minutes for botany. Physics took around 20 to half an hour, 20 minutes to half an hour, and around 20 minutes for chemistry. So I think the paper was I could finish the paper within 1 hour 10 minutes, 1 hour 20 minutes. And then I started checking the paper. I checked, my first checking, I took around 1 hour 20 minutes again. And the second round of checking, I had to hurry through it. So in around 20 minutes, I had to finish it, because I got my second shock at 4:30 when I was doing my second checking, that the paper would be collected at 5:05. I was under the impression that we would get 3 hours 20 minutes, so it would be till 5:20. But the invigilator at 4:30 said that she would collect the paper at 5:05 and would not give us time till 5:20, because she had to submit the paper in the office by 5:20. So I hurried through my second checking, and ultimately I couldn't check all the 4 sections twice. I could check physics, chemistry and zoology twice, but I could check botany only once, which was fine, because during my first round of checking I found 1 error in physics, 1 error in chemistry and 1 error in zoology, but I had not found any error in botany. So that was fine for me. And then there were some difficult questions in every topic. In physics, there was one wrong question based on photoelectric effect. So I think none of the options was correct if you think of it realistically. But then mathematically, when I solved it, I was able to get one option. So I thought for some time, but I found that none of the options could be realistically correct. So I went with the option that made sense mathematically. Then there was one more question on Biot-Savart's law, which said that Biot-Savart's law can be used to find the magnetic field due to current carrying element only. That only word was sounding somewhat confusing, because generally when only is used, it is used to confuse us. But ultimately I went with my gut feel and based on what I had learned from NCERT, because NCERT is the one which you should think of when you are in dilemma. And here that ultimately helped, NCERT has mentioned Biot-Savart's law, magnetic field due to current carrying element, and that's what I followed. That's what NTA also followed in the answer key, and luckily my answer was correct. And this time chemistry was a really nice chemistry paper. There were many new types of questions like assertion, reason, and lot of statement based questions were there, where they gave 2 statements and identify first is true, second is true, which is false, that way. So there was one question based on physical properties which said it used the term weak dipole forces. So this depends on the way one thinks. Dipole forces are stronger than London forces, but at the same time they are van der Waals forces, so they are weak. I got confused here, and I just went with what I had read in NCERT, because ultimately it turned out to be a direct NCERT statement. My gut feel said that it was a correct statement, and ultimately it was correct. So here again I think I got lucky. And the assertion reason questions were somewhat confusing, with option A and option B, whether it's a correct explanation or not. But again I went with my gut feel, and based on what I had studied in the NCERT, based on the language NCERT used, and my answers were correct, luckily. So this is very important, understanding the language NCERT uses, understanding the type of language NTA tries to use in its question papers, and judging accordingly. There will be some confusing questions in the exam hall, and especially in that exam hall mindset, it is very difficult to judge. So you should go to the exam hall with a very calm and composed frame of mind. You can meditate like the way I did. I just sat like that for 1 hour without thinking of the topic. I just closed my eyes and I sat there. So you should do something like this to hold your nerves during the exam hall. And there was one more question in chemistry regarding boiling points of hydrides. So the second statement which they had given, that boiling points of hydrides increases with increase in molar mass. So that was a little confusing, because that was an exception in the question. It was due to hydrogen bonding, and it was very difficult to judge whether they were talking about the first statement or they were talking independently. But again, I went with the notion that they were talking about first statement, and that was also a correct line of thinking ultimately. Coming to biology sections, this year's biology, both botany and zoology, were a little difficult compared to the previous year. So 2021 paper was like one sentence questions and one word options. But this year it was not so. There were assertion reason questions which were new. There were a lot of statement based questions. There were many questions where 5 statements were given, and you were expected to find out which options among these were correct. And I made a mistake in one such question, although it's a very debated question. That line was from NCERT, but it was not considered ultimately in the key by NTA. So a lot of students made errors in that question. It was question number 105 in my set from anatomy of flowering plants. They had given 5 statements, A, B, C, D, E. Actually, all the 5 statements were correct if you follow NCERT, but they just went with B, C, D, E and said A was incorrect. Still, we don't know why A is incorrect. We feel that as per NCERT, A is a correct statement, but yeah, that happened. So, in zoology also this was the same situation. There were a lot of assertion reason based questions, although not controversial. There was one question which was based on a previous year question. It somewhat contradicted NCERT because NCERT used the term, I think, from the seminiferous tubules, whereas in the paper it was into. So I was able to visualize the entire process during the exam, and I had marked as per my knowledge. And this was based on a previous year question, NEET 2018 question as well. But I think many of my friends had found it confusing. So I would recommend that you solve all the previous year questions before attempting NEET. You can do it when you're solving the chapter, but also like 1 month before the exam or 1 week before the exam, you should go through all the PYQs. Many questions come directly from PYQ, and this question especially, it somewhat contradicted NCERT, but it was based on a PYQ. So if you had solved all the PYQs well, you could get it. So now I'm going to show you this NEET 2022 question paper, and I'm going to give you the feel of how it was, and I'm going to talk about the questions which I had spoken about earlier, the ones which I found tricky. Let's start with physics. As you can see, all the questions are almost direct questions, formula based. Energy radiated by 100 kilowatt transmitter in 1 hour, you just have to multiply the power with the time to find the energy. And plane angle and solid angle have, again this is from lesson 2. It is very easy. They have units, but they have no dimensions because they are ratios and the units cancel out. See, look at this question, question number 7. Monochromatic lights of frequency nu and nu by 2 are incident, and the stopping potential becomes Vs by 2 and Vs. So this means there is ejection of electrons when lights of nu and nu by 2 are shown on the surface. But if you see the options, all the threshold frequencies are greater than nu and nu by 2. 3 nu by 2 is greater than nu, 2 nu, 3 nu, and these 3 are greater than nu. 2 by 3 nu is greater than nu by 2. So once again, there can be no photoelectric emission if nu by 2 is shown. That means all these 4 options physically are incorrect. But when you mathematically solve them, you get the answer as 3 nu by 2, because you end up getting negative kinetic energy, which doesn't make sense physically, but yeah, as per formula you can get it. So that's what I did. There was no option which made sense physically, but the only way left for me was to solve it mathematically, and I got the answer 3 nu by 2, and that's what came in the key as well. And then there is this question number 23, which is about Biot-Savart's law. It says that Biot-Savart's law gives us the expression for magnetic field strength of infinitesimal current element ideal of a current carrying conductor only. This only word is the one which is confusing. If this word were not to be there, it would have been a straightforward question, but this only is confusing. Whether they have anything else in mind, whether it can be used to find something else which we don't know about. But I think I stuck to NCERT and I marked this statement as correct, and that's what NTA did as well in their key. So once again, this is a reminder that you should just go with what NCERT says in case of confusion. And that's about physics. I think section 1, that is the first 35 questions, were very easy. In section 2, there were a few confusing questions, like this question number 39, stretching of spring is determined by shear modulus of material of spring. So you should be very thorough with the lines of NCERT in physics as well. This is a question from mechanical properties of solids from class 11th NCERT part 2. And they can ask such questions as well, and of late such questions have been increasing in NEET. So you should not neglect NCERT even for physics. Now let's come to chemistry. Chemistry, as I said, it was a very good question, and there were a lot of statement-based questions, a lot of assertion reasons. So you can see this question number 55, especially the second statement. Primary aromatic amines react with HNO2 to form diazonium salts which are stable even above 300 Kelvin. So this is an incorrect statement. It is, written in NCERT that these are unstable, and you should be familiar with this line when you attempt the question paper. So I think it's nothing like organic chemistry just is about reactions and reaction mechanisms, the catalyst and the products. Anything can be asked. They can ask about physical properties also, or these lines which are mentioned just below the heading in amines chapter under that subunit of diazonium salts. So this part is very important as well. And question number 62 is an assertion reason question, which is the first statement is based on point defect and second statement is based on Frenkel defect. So yes, Frenkel defect is a point defect, but still the second statement doesn't really explain the first statement, because ionic solid is electrically neutral even if few of its cations are missing from its unit cells. They are not talking about Frenkel defect here, they are talking about Schottky defect. That is not mentioned in the question, but that's what they are implying. And the second one is about Frenkel defect. So the second statement is not an explanation of the first statement, even though Frenkel is a point defect, but in the first statement they are talking about the particular point defect which is Schottky defect. So this strategy is important. You should know how to attempt assertion reason questions, because earlier it used to be asked in names, now it is coming in NEET. So you should be familiar with this model as well. And this is question 63 which I am talking about. Boiling points of aldehydes and ketones are higher than hydrocarbons because of weak molecular association due to dipole-dipole interaction. So dipole-dipole interaction is weak, that is true, because it's a van der Waals force. At the same time, it is a strong force if you compare with London force. So one should be very familiar with the lines of NCERT. That's why I say you should analyze NCERT from all possible perspectives. When they say weak dipole-dipole forces in NCERT, you should think it is stronger than London, but still they have mentioned weak. So you should learn this, and you should find out where you can potentially get confused in the exam hall. And coming to question number 84, the hydrides question which I was talking about. The first statement is wrong. H2O is the greatest when you compare with boiling point. So H2O should have been in the end, and then H2S, H2SE, H2TE. And the second statement says boiling points of these hydrides increase with molar mass. So this is a little tricky statement, because this statement is true for all except one. It is not true for H2O, but it is true for the remaining three. So how to analyze? Even I got confused in the exam hall, but then I felt that this second statement is an explanation of the first statement. It is just the explanation of the first statement in words. So first statement is wrong, which automatically means second statement is wrong. This is how I thought, and ultimately this is how NTA has prepared the key. Although I do agree it is a little ambiguous, and when you solve more questions of this type during your mock tests, you get an idea as to how to attempt these questions in the exam hall. See, there is a question based on environmental chemistry, question number 92. And I know I didn't attempt this question because it was a little tricky, but it can very well come in the mandatory question section, that is section A. So you should be prepared with even chapters like environmental chemistry. A question has come in 2021 and it has come in 2022 as well. Now coming to biology. Biology had many lengthy questions this time. I will discuss a few of them, like question number 102. Which of the following cannot be connected to predation? Option number 3 says it might lead to extinction of species, whereas NCERT says that predators are prudent and they don't generally lead the prey to extinction. So this is a somewhat confusing statement, but the fact is, in some cases, if some exotic animal is introduced in a habitat, then it may lead to extinction of a species. So you should think a little out of the box. You should try to relate other lines of NCERT and attempt these questions like this. So the answer is question number 4. Both the interacting species are negatively impacted, and it is not true because the predator is positively impacted, although the prey is negatively impacted. So you should see all the options. When you think a particular option is correct, you should not just stop with that particular option. You should analyze all the options, because in this question there is another option which is more relevant, which sounds more correct, and then you start thinking why the other option is not correct. You get an answer, and that leads to a higher accuracy in the exam hall. See, question number 106 based on PCR is an assertion reason question, although this is somewhat straightforward because the second statement is in no way related to first statement. So answer is option 3. Both are correct, but R is not the correct explanation of A because obviously they are not related, but both are correct. Then this question number 114, the most controversial question of NEET 2022. It has 5 statements and all the 5 statements are from NCERT, but unfortunately there is no option which says A, B, C, D, E. Most of the options have a combination of 4 statements and one option has a combination of just 3 statements. Ultimately the answer chosen by NTA was option 3, B, C, D, E, but you can find statement A in NCERT as well. I spent a lot of time on this question while attempting the paper. I left it for the end, and till the end I could not get the correct answer or get a convincing answer. So I just marked option number 4, and unfortunately it was wrong. See, question number 124 as well, it has 5 statements and you have to select the correct statements. It's the same with question number 123, 5 statements, choose the correct statements, combination of statements. Lot of questions of this type have been asked. In contrast to NEET 2021 paper, because in 2021 they were mostly short questions. There was not much emphasis on such type of questions where 5 statements, 4 statements, select the correct one. But this time there are a lot of questions of this type which can imply that no subject is always easy, no subject is always difficult. Physics, which is thought to be the most difficult subject, is very easy this time. And biology is somewhat more time consuming, somewhat lengthier. And many students, many friends of mine and many other students have lost out in biology this time. And coming to zoology, it's almost a similar situation in zoology as well. You can see question number 155 has 2 statements or about autoimmune disorder, and question number 158 is an assertion reason question. Question number 159 also is assertion reason. Then this question number 166 in taxonomic categories, which hierarchical arrangement in ascending order is correct? So actually there is no correct ascending order. The one which makes most sense is kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, option 2, but again that is in descending order. You can see all the 4 statements start with kingdom, which is the highest. So all are supposed to be in descending, there is no ascending, but still NTA has chosen option 2 as the correct option. So sometimes you may feel that no option is correct, you may feel that the question is wrong, but you should choose the most appropriate answer in that case. So the others are not even correct in order, only option 2 is correct in order. So if you get such a question, you should choose such options. And this was a little tricky question, question number 174. It was about lac-operon, which is a part of genetics, that is molecular basis of inheritance. So it's a conceptual question. You should have deep understanding of that question in order to attempt this question and answer it accurately. And question number 177, again they have given 5 statements. You have to select 3 correct statements in that. And 188 as well, although this is in section B, but such statements are given more in biology section this time. Question number 188 and question number 189 are this type. Then this one as well, question number 196, a very conceptual question which requires very deep understanding of the topic, that is recombination. Such questions are not there in NCERT, but they are based on the concept which is taught in NCERT. So in biology, concept understanding is important. It's not just learning the lines of NCERT, it's learning how to apply these concepts in questions. And this year's biology paper is a perfect example of how biology can become lengthy or take more time if you just learn the lines without trying to understand them. And so that was about NEET 2022 paper. So now I finished the exam hall and I'm going to tell you what I did after coming out of the exam hall. So naturally, as I told you, I faced a lot of unexpected circumstances in the exam hall, like not getting entire 3 or 20 minutes or not being allowed to tick on the question paper. So I was not in a great frame of mind, and when I exited I was somewhat rattled, I was demotivated, and I felt very bad that this paper may have gone badly because I was not at all used to what I had to do. So when I came out, I spoke to my father. I told him, everything happened the way we didn't want it to happen, and I really don't know how I did. Even he was somewhat anxious and he was worried. He didn't talk to me about the paper on our way back home. After I went home, I just locked myself in a room, and by that time, a lot of institutes had released their coaching answer keys. I also opened some of the answer keys. I was very nervous, my hands were shaking, but I mustered courage to open the answer keys and view them. And to my relief, when I started checking, I found that all the options were the ones which I had actually selected in the exam hall. And that gave me confidence. I had enough courage to check all the 180 questions which I had solved, and they were all correct. That botany question was given as bonus by many institutes, so I had assumed that NTA would do so as well. I was very much relieved on that day, and I felt that this 2-year journey had come to an end, a very great end. Although it's not that I didn't have ups and downs. On the last day also I faced a lot of a lot of worries, but as they say, all is well that ends well. After this exam, NTA took a lot of time to release our OMR and the provisional answer keys. We got it almost 1.5 months after the exam. Exam was held on 17 July and we got our provisional answer keys and the OMR sheet on 31st of August, which was Ganesh Chaturthi day. So by then I was somewhat confident that it would go well. Just that I had this doubt of what I had marked on the OMR sheet. Because I had to hurry through the OMR, I got only 15 minutes for marking the entire OMR. I was a little skeptical, but then after checking it, thankfully everything was correct. I had marked whatever I had intended to. And then I checked the answer key. Besides this botany question, everything was correct. And I think this botany question was one which many had answered incorrectly because it was an ambiguous question, you could say a wrong question. So I didn't worry too much about that. And finally, the result was released on the night of 7th of September. So we were waiting very expectantly, and as usual the site crashed, and ultimately at 11 o'clock we got a call from my teacher who told me that I had secured All India rank 3. I had secured 715 out of 720. It was a great feeling, it was a relief, and at the same time a tad disappointment that they had not considered the botany question for bonus. So yeah, that was it. Overall, I am really grateful to everyone who supported me during this journey, and God's grace, best wishes of my parents and my teachers, and the good wishes of all my friends and my well-wishers. So this was my entire experience the day before the exam, the experience in the exam hall, and a little about the result day and the OMR sheet release day. And I hope these inputs were useful to you. Develop your own strategy based on what I told you, and the adverse situations which I faced may not necessarily happen, and there is 99% probability that you will not experience this. But there is still that 1% chance that it may happen the way it happened to me, and you should be prepared for it. I was not very well prepared for it, and I was a little rattled. I got scared, I got panicked for some time during the exam hall. Fortunately, it was not for long because in NEET you can't afford to be thrown off track. You get just one question per minute. So you should be prepared for all situations. Come out of your comfort zone while giving these mock exams and be confident in yourself. And all the best to everyone. You can crack it.